Hello, everyone, and welcome to the Asher Marketing Podcast. This podcast is hosted by Asher Agency, a full-service partner to clients nationwide. Asher's services include media planning, creative, digital and social, website development, public relations, printing and fulfillment, and more. Anything you need to connect with your prospects and tell your story. To learn more, visit asheragency.com or contact us at hello@asheragency.com. My guest is David Lorenz. David, how you doing?
Great, Anthony. I appreciate you taking time to visit with me.
Well, thank you so much for doing this. You and I have actually known each other for a long time. We don't see each other very often, but I think we go back to your days when the team was the Fort Wayne Wizards.
We do, yes. I moved here in '99 and was on the staff for 9 seasons when we were the Fort Wayne Wizards.
Yeah. Well, we're going to talk a little bit about those days, but we're recording this I especially appreciate you doing this because we're recording this in the middle of the season. So you mentioned on the way in that you're about halfway through home games for the season. Is that right?
We are. It's hard to believe. Here we are on January the 6th.
June 6th.
June 6th. Pardon me, man. We had a long 12-game homestand.
Yeah.
So here we are I should know June the 6th. It's my parents' anniversary. So if they're listening, forgive me. We have 66 home games, and we just finished game 30 this past Sunday.
Wow. Okay. Time's flying. So you have other places to be, so we're going to jump right into it. And I want to start with your career path because you've made a career in professional baseball. But I want to start at the beginning, whatever that is for you. When did you start thinking about careers, and what were you planning at that time? And did you follow that path, or did you take some detours?
Yeah, that's a great question. I grew up in a baseball family.
Okay.
My mom was the secretary and treasurer of the local Little League for 48 years.
Oh, wow. Okay.
So
this is in Michigan,
This is in Mount Pleasant, Michigan. Yeah. We're an hour north of Lansing.
Okay.
So when I was 5 years old, I was going to the ballpark every day to help my mom with the concessions, and then I played, and then I was an umpire.
Okay.
And baseball has always been a part of our whole family's DNA.
Yep. Mm-hmm.
So I'm the youngest of 3. I'm the first one and only one in my family to graduate from college.
Okay.
And I was just happy to have that on my resume.
Yeah, sure.
And then I'm like, well, what do I want to do? Mm-hmm. My best friend, my best man at my wedding, his dad was the head baseball coach at Central Michigan University.
Okay.
True story. I was at their house one day, and there was a book on the table, and it was the minor league baseball Bible. And I said, well, what is that?
Yeah.
And it had every team in minor league baseball in there with the team presidents, the owners, and the addresses. And I'm like, that sounds like a neat thing. I want to look into it.
Okay.
Sent out my resume. I'll make a long story short. I went to Dallas for the winter meetings. I was offered 3 job opportunities.
Okay.
One was in sales, one was in PR, and one was in marketing.
Oh, wow. Okay.
And everybody told me that I had met along the journey, if you really want to make a difference, go into sales.
Huh. Okay.
Lots of different reasons.
Yeah.
So I did that. I got in my car. I drove to Chattanooga, Tennessee on January the 16th, 1995.
And this is the Lookouts, right?
The Chattanooga Lookouts, correct. Yeah. And I moved down there, Anthony, to make a whopping $200 a month. So
So the car ride cost you more than your first paycheck.
You're exactly right.
Yeah.
Actually, halfway there, I slept in a parking lot. I don't know if I would encourage anybody to do that, but I had to do what I had to do. So I'll never forget my father, a great guy. I think I get a lot of my work ethic from him. Mm-hmm. He said, "What are you doing?" And I said, "Well, Mount Pleasant, Michigan's a great town. It's a college town, and if you're not working for the university, there's not a lot of opportunity."
Sure.
So I knew that I had to move somewhere to continue my growth. And I went there to do group sales, ticket sales. I think I did like $100,000 in sales my first year.
Yeah.
And no matter what career we all choose, we all have to have stepping stones and mentors.
Yep.
And Bill Davidson, our team president, ended up getting my second job. Getting my second job in Battle Creek, Michigan.
All right.
And then my third job in Davenport, Iowa.
Okay.
And he's still a friend today. And I'll never forget when we met, all the interns met with Bill. Bill said, if I see you on the concourse, and if I know that you see some trash, and if you don't pick it up, it'll be the last day you ever work here. Mm-hmm. And I've taken that with me the last 29 seasons.
Yeah. Well, and it's not your job, but it is your job, right?
You're exactly right.
Yeah. Yeah.
You're exactly right.
So early on, you're moving around the country. Mostly, it sounds like in the Midwest. But what's that like? Is that something you expected going into it? You kind of knew that was part of the deal, or was that something that was a surprise, negative or positive for you?
Oh, it's been nothing but a positive.
Yeah.
And it was expected.
Yeah.
And, from those first 3 stops, then my 4th stop got me to Nashville, Tennessee.
Yep. And that was the Sounds?
The Nashville Sounds. Yeah. I worked there for 3 years with Mike Nutter. Then we had a couple, and then when we moved to Fort Wayne, Indiana, that's 3 teams in 3 years.
Yeah.
And it's like, okay, but you can explain it. And when you're in minor league baseball, the person on the other side of the table talking to you, they understand.
Yeah.
There's a lot of ebb and flows to it.
For sure. I actually saw a Nashville Sounds game. It would have been somewhere between 1994 and 98.
Might have been there for it.
I remember it was an older stadium, but it was a bigger stadium because they were
AAA, yes.
Yeah, okay. And I remember I got a pack of Nashville Sounds baseball cards.
Interesting. I'd like to see that pack. I'd be curious to see
I
who's in
still
it.
have them, and there's probably people who went on to a great career that I would have liked to keep the cards, but I remember that distinctly. So you move to Fort Wayne with Mike Nutter. Is this when the Wizards are established, or are they already established when you come on the
They were
scene?
established. I believe they were in year 7 when we came on board.
All right. And this is out at Memorial Coliseum, very different environment than Parkview Field. And how do you end up being asked to make that move? Is it a package deal with you and Mike? Does it just happen coincidentally? How does all that come together?
That's a great question. Well, Bill Larson, who was the team president for 2 years here in Fort Wayne, he was Mike's very first boss with the Kane County Cougars.
Okay.
In Geneva, Illinois, in the Midwest League. And then Bill then went to Nashville and was the team president there for 2 years.
Okay.
So he brought Mike along because he knew Mike.
Yep.
And then I kind of ended up going to Nashville from Davenport, Iowa, because our radio broadcaster in Davenport left for Nashville. And he called me and said, "David, you need to get to Nashville."
Okay.
So David got in the U-Haul and got to Nashville.
Yeah. All right. So you've now been with the Fort Wayne professional baseball team, once the Wizards, now the Tin Caps, for how many years?
This is year 24. And when my wife, Lisa, and I moved here, all we knew was what we did the last 5 or 6 years, where every 2 years you go to a different team.
Yeah. Well, that's exactly.
And now here we are, year 24.
So how is it that you've stayed in one spot in professional baseball for that long?
Well, I think the main thing is the community.
Mm-hmm.
The community, the Fort Wayne Comets, the Mad Ants, the Tin Caps, former the Wizards. We have a lot of great community support.
Yeah.
So with that being said, we've also had 2 great owners here in town since I've been here. Andy Appleby was with us for about 6 or 7 years, and then he sold to Jason Fryer, who was our owner and our current owner since about 2006, give or take. And he also owns the Columbia Fireflies, single A team of the Royals, and then the Chattanooga Lookouts, double A team of the Reds. And I don't know if Jason's going to listen to this or not. Hopefully he does. He's super owner, and he continues to put us in a position to be successful.
Yeah.
He's never said no to anything we've ever asked for. And we work in one of the best facilities of all of minor league baseball, Parkview Field. And before we started rolling, I mentioned to you, we've also got 15 out of our 32, give or take, full-time staff members have been here over 15 years.
Yeah, that's amazing to me.
It's unheard of.
I had no idea because my uneducated thought on it was that you have some established folks like yourself, and then you have a lot of people who are just starting their careers who cycle in and out every year. But that's very much not the case, it sounds like.
We don't. We've got guys and girls in our group sales department that have been here 10, 12, 15 years.
Yeah.
And we really look at what we're doing each and every year. Michael Limmer is our VP of marketing, and we're constantly looking at what the trends are, what other folks are doing.
Yeah.
And we try to add our own twist. Like this past weekend, we had the Fort Wayne Daisies out. We had 3 women that were a part of the Daisies, And I believe it's our second consecutive year we've been doing that. And we're going to continue to do that as long as these ladies are willing to come out and participate.
So that was a professional baseball team comprised of women, kind of like a league of their own, but
Correct.
in Fort Wayne. When were they active? What years?
I believe it was like in the late 40s, like 42 to like 51,
Okay.
if I'm not mistaken. Like Dottie Collins, who the movie was portrayed about.
Yeah.
Her grandson came out this
wow.
past Sunday,
Well, that's
and
great.
he was recognized out on the field, along with, there was a bat girl that
Okay.
came out.
Huh.
And, it's just, we really need to cherish these heroes
Yeah.
that we have in our community, because someday there's going to be an opportunity where that's just not going to happen.
Yeah, for sure.
And, we're also playing as the Tenderloins later this year.
Yeah, so tell me about that. What is that connection? I'm a baseball fan, but that's a reference I don't recognize.
Well, the Tenderloin is the unofficial sandwich of the state of Indiana.
Okay.
So we're going to be doing that later this year. So we're always looking for new ways to get new fans come out to the ballpark and enjoy themselves, because it's not necessarily about the final score.
Yeah.
It's about the food, the different jerseys. This past Sunday we did a tribute to the military, and we had a cool flyover. We had, I think, 6,700 people at the ballpark.
Yeah.
On a Sunday afternoon in minor league baseball, great weather, great turnout, and just another cool promotion. And that's and if you watch the major leagues, 15, 20, 25 years ago, you never saw an outfield sign at a major league ballpark.
Yeah. Yeah.
But the minor leagues have, to be honest with you, kind of set the trend on a lot of that stuff.
Yeah.
And the major leagues are starting to borrow what we're doing.
Well, and there's
a lot of creative minds in the MILB.
Yeah, one of the teams that comes to mind, the Savannah Bananas. I follow, I think it's their owner on social media.
Jesse Cole.
And he wears a yellow suit and a yellow top hat, and they're always doing pretty crazy stuff, but it brings fans in and people talk about it. So let's talk a little bit, David, about your role with the organization, how you fit into the big picture. So you're on the sponsorship side. Tell us a little bit about what that means and what role you play and how that fits into what the Tin Caps do overall.
Sure. Well, sponsorships are a great opportunity for fans and for companies to tie their brand in with our brand. And my role is sales, but I call it building relationships, because you can't get to home plate unless you touch first, second, third, and fourth.
Yep.
If somebody wants to buy season tickets or a small group package or do a picnic or do some of that stuff, that's a little easier to say yes to, because it's more of a transactional type of buy, where mine and the partnerships are long term. Our most popular branding is an outfield sign. We only have 22.
Yeah.
So I can't sell 23.
Sure.
Can't sell
Sure.
24. I got 22. And we sell those on a 3-year deal. We can't do a 2-year. We can't do a 1. We do a 3-year deal because we want to have long-term partnerships and continue to move forward on that. And we've also got a lot of specialty areas.
Yep.
So my main thing, and Jen Sylvester, who works with me in our department of 2, my main goal is to get them out to the ballpark and then just walk around. And I ask a couple questions. They're not groundbreaking or anything, but when you come out of the ballpark, what do you like? When you come out of the ballpark, how do you see yourself fitting in?
Yeah.
And once they can answer some questions and we kind of talk about and, kick the tires and walk around the ballpark, I can get a proposal to them in their inbox by the time they get back into their car.
Yeah. That's
Because
great.
we've got all our proposals all ready to go.
Well, and it seems like there's new opportunities every year. You think that the stadium is, this static entity, but there's creative things happening all the time that I assume lead to new sponsorship opportunities.
You're exactly right. Parkview Field opened in 2009. 2020, COVID year, that was the year we actually got a new video board, new digital signs in the outfield, new concourse billboards, which were brand new, never had those before. And so that added some extra inventory.
Yeah.
And then also with the new sound system. So we had a lot planned for 2020.
Yeah.
So we decided to roll that into 2021.
Yep.
It's funny you mentioned partnerships regarding, new. every year, usually August 1st, Jen and I and Michael Limmer and some other people, we'll walk around the ballpark and say, what are we missing?
Yeah.
And it's amazing what you can do when you just ask that simple question.
Yeah.
And if you if you continue to look what the other teams are doing.
Yeah.
Like a couple of years ago, we had a bobblehead of Johnny at the ballpark.
Yeah.
And I suggested
and it was right outside
the team
store. Yeah. Yeah.
We moved it last year down in front of our conference room windows, which were just fans could see through. So we put the branding on the back wall and put Johnny in front of it. And it's just a great backdrop.
Yeah.
And you have to continue to just develop new ideas.
Well, I'm sure that gets difficult as long as you've been with the organization because it's just hard to look at it objectively. You see the facility every day, and that's where, some other perspectives or going to other facilities, I'm sure helps kind of sparks that innovation.
You're exactly right.
So what are from your perspective, what are some of the best opportunities for partnerships at Parkview Field? Some of the things you think that either are unique to Fort Wayne, they're, high profile, or that you think are great values for what's available to sponsors?
Sure. Well, I think all of our partnerships are a great opportunity.
Yeah, well, I expected that was going to be the first thing you'd say, yeah.
And I think it just depends on... I don't pigeonhole anybody into what I think they should do, no matter what their name on their business card is.
Sure.
Because I want them to be a part of what they love.
Yep.
Because if they don't love it in year one, they're not going to love it in years 2, 3, 4, and 5.
Sure.
So I want to make sure that they're on board with what they like and what they want to have. So, and then also budgets.
Yep.
Whether you've got $500 or $200,000.
Yeah.
I want to be able to spend that in the way that they want to spend it.
Yeah.
It's not about what David or what Jen or Mike Nutter wants people to buy. It's what they want to buy. Yeah. So that's a kind of a tough question.
Sure.
To answer.
I told you there wouldn't be any tough questions.
Thanks. I was waiting for some softballs. But I think that's the key to our success.
Yeah.
Is that we don't necessarily sell you what we want you to buy.
Yeah.
We sell you what you want to buy.
Yeah. Well, and I think one of the advantages is the variety. I expect a lot of people who listen to this will be familiar with Parkview Field, but those who aren't, there's a kids area, which is great for businesses that want to reach families. There's some sweet areas that are great for folks who want to reach that consumer. There's, people who are there for baseball. There's people who are there who really are indifferent about baseball. So you have an opportunity to reach a wide variety of audiences, and it's just a matter of what's going to be the right opportunity where you're most likely to get in front of those eyeballs and ears.
You're right. A few years ago, I think I totaled up there's 13 different areas of the ballpark where you can sit and watch a game.
Oh, wow. Okay.
So, and we also do our own food and beverage.
Yep.
And what's neat about that, we're able to manipulate our relationships with all those food vendors. Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. And by having different options, whether it's food, fireworks, the different promotions that we have, there's always something really neat going on each and every game that people can come out and enjoy. And we also take to heart that it could be somebody's first game.
Yeah, for sure.
I try to be by the main entrance when people walk in.
Yeah.
And you'll know right away when somebody hasn't been there lately or before. First thing they do is they just kind of look up into the sky and look at the wayfinding signs.
Yeah.
Hey, can I help you find anything? Where are your seats at tonight?
Yeah.
Is this your first time? It's just a great way to show that little interaction and to have that interaction with the fan. And the first thing I give them a game program. I say, open up to the middle of the section. All of our food is located in there.
Yeah.
And before you decide what you want to eat, I always encourage you to do a lap of the ballpark.
Yep. Yeah.
So they can find the restrooms, all the amenities, the fun zone that you mentioned, also the splash pad out in right center.
Yeah. Well, and that's great advice. One of the things, my little secret that I learned this year is that a lot of times some of the best food has the shortest lines because people go where people are, right? So you've got the bigger concession areas. There's a long line and people go, oh, that's where the food is. And I sneak by all those people and I go to the brisket guy with the brisket
barbecue
sandwiches.
Cart. Good call.
Yes. And I'm usually second in line and I'm like, great, I can get in and get out and get something that's maybe even, as good as what I could get if I stood in line for 10 minutes.
You're exactly. Well, that's what's neat.
That's probably no secret to you.
You're right. And that's the whole thing about the experience.
Yeah.
I mean, people are coming for, everybody has a different reason. My main goal when I was here the first 8 years with the Wizards was selling group outings and company events. And I always told people, and I start off with, not everybody's going to like baseball, but I can give you 99 other things that people are going to enjoy about their experience.
Yeah, for sure. I mean, I'm someone who I grew up with baseball. I would consider myself a fan of watching baseball, but there are times I go to Parkview Field and I watch maybe half the game because I'm doing other things, right? I'm talking to people who I know out in the concourse area. If my stepdaughter is with me, she's climbing the wall or trying to climb the wall. So it keeps you moving in a very productive way. And oh, by the way, there's a baseball game, which is great fun too. So a lot of opportunities there. All right, well, let's talk a little bit about some quick hit questions related to some of the things that we've talked about. But I want to hear your best answers to these. So let's talk about your career. You have built, I think it's fair to say, a successful career in professional baseball. You've had a great run in Fort Wayne, but you've done some different things. What are some things you've learned along the way? What's some of your best advice when it comes to building a fulfilling, successful career?
Man, I think together I could help you write one chapter of your book on this. I think the key ingredient is to be a lifelong learner, whether you're 26, 36, or I'm 56. I love knowledge. I love to know things. I love to know why we're doing something and how it all works. But I would really encourage people to never stop, and keep driving. It's challenging, man. I mentioned to you when I walked in, yesterday our staff had the day up, but we had 12 games in 13 days.
Yeah.
Whether you're 26, 36, or 56, that's a long 2 weeks. It's a long 2 weeks on your mental health, your physical health. Plus, we all have families.
Yeah.
It's tough on them too. But there's a reason why we're in baseball. We have a passion for it.
Yeah.
I mean, I mentioned to you earlier, I was 5 when I started going to the ballpark when I was a little kid with my parents. And but be a lifelong learner. Get a great mentor or two. Get somebody that you can talk to, not necessarily a coworker, but get somebody outside of your normal routine, and just have somebody that you can just talk to and feel good about and enjoy the conversation and get some great advice.
Yeah. No, I think that's great. And I'm going to sidebar here for a second, because if I'm not mistaken, if your LinkedIn profile is correct, you've actually dug into that a little bit with a side venture where you're providing some resources for folks to maybe learn how to be successful in their career. You want to talk about that a little bit?
Yeah, I can a little bit. It's something I've been really passionate about. I've been thinking for the last 8 to 10 years is, what am I going to do when I'm in my early to mid 60s when I want to retire? And I really thoroughly enjoy watching other people be successful. There was a time, Anthony, where I loved making every sale.
Yeah.
I really did.
Yeah.
But now, as I see and I develop my own self, I really thrive watching others be successful.
Yeah.
And a few years ago, I was our first tin cap staff member who went through Leadership Fort Wayne.
Yeah.
Okay. And I remember you spoke to us out at the Boy Scouts.
Yep.
And so the next year they asked me to come in and talk about my experience. Well, I don't know if you've ever opened up a brand new baseball, but if you ever have, it comes in a wrapper and it comes out. Well, I've always called it a pearl. And I took that to make P for pearl, E for engagement, A for attitude, R for relationship, and L for leadership. So that's kind of where I took that from.
Yeah.
And then after developing the concept over the last 5 or 6 years, I've come up with the Pearl advantage.
Okay.
If Pearl is every part of your daily routine, you're going to have the advantage over others.
Oh, all right.
So I've already worked on a lot of different stuff. I haven't reached out to any teams.
Yeah.
But it's something I've been looking forward to do. So I'm from Nashville. Well, I'm not from Nashville, but I lived in Nashville for 3 years. And there's this gentleman in Nashville, Nathan Lyons, just bought the Lexington Legends. And I sent him a LinkedIn message just saying, hey, Nathan, I see you bought Lexington. I was with the Sounds for 3 years. If I can ever help, let me know.
Yeah.
I didn't know where that was going to lead to. So I ended up talking to his staff for an hour and a half one day. And I believe I'm going to be going back later this year to see the staff and just walk the ballpark and give them any suggestions that I can.
Yeah.
We work in a great industry. And during COVID, we lost a lot of good people in minor league baseball, not just with the Tin Caps, but with all 119 other teams. And my passion is MILB. It's not Major League Baseball. It's not the NHL, the NBA. It's minor league baseball, because from October 1 to May 1, that's when I'm busy along with Jen putting together partnership opportunities. And then from May 1st to September 30th, then we're implementing everything. So earlier when you ask, what am I working on? We're looking at 2024. And so anytime I can help, and at the end of the day, I only know what I know. And it works for me. So, but if I can give any of those little details to somebody, that'll make them better. I take a lot of pride in that.
Well, I think that's great, and I admire that because, number one, you have to have learned some things along the way. In how many years is it now that you've been in the industry?
This is year 25. Or, I'm sorry, 29.
29, yeah. So, and what I always tell people, because like you, I love to kind of share what I know. I don't claim to know everything. I don't claim to know much, but I know something. I'm 53 years old, so hopefully I learned something along the way. I always tell people, you don't have to be the world's foremost expert in your topic. What you have to do is bring, obviously, knowledge that people can use, but bring your unique perspective. You're not saying I'm the only person who knows this, or I know more than other people. You're saying, here's what I do know. Here's how it shaped my decisions, both my good decisions and my bad decisions, to give people a framework for making better decisions down the line. That's really what it's all about. And it really resonated with me when you talked about, how you used to want to make every sale, but now you're equally and perhaps even more invested in other people's success. That's one of the great things I think in my career is I'm now at a point, especially here at Asher, where I'm almost more invested in, I hope, helping other people move up than moving up myself. It's like, I'm in a good place. I don't need to compete with my colleagues. I want to help give them a boost so they can be more competitive and better down the line.
And they're going to stay on board for several more years to come. Because you've taken time to invest in your knowledge with them.
And they're really smart.
And they're smarter than us. Right?
Yeah, for sure. Well, that's great. That's really good advice. All right, well, let's talk about the second question. And this one might be really easy for you. It might be difficult, but it has to do with either a myth or a misconception that people have about your work. And that could be the Tin Caps, it could be sales, it could be your specific role. Either a myth or misconception people have, or something that's not appreciated well enough that you think deserves to be amplified. What is that for you?
Well, that's another great question. I think that the main thing is it's not easy. It's really not easy. And I always tell people, if it was easy, everybody would do it. So you've got to have a different mindset, right? You've got to have, I might not get the sale this year, but you know what? I'm not going to forget about them. There's a sign on our outfield wall. I had been calling this gentleman for 10 years, literally 10 years. Got him on board last year. You can't give up. Because if you give up on yourself. You also give up on the other employees coworkers that you work with. So I'm a big believer of you just have to just keep your head to the grindstone. We win some, we lose some, right? And we also win some we weren't expecting.
Sometimes stuff falls into your lap.
It really does. And man, I wish we did get more things that fell in our lap. But there are times that when it happens. And I had a client a few years ago. They had one of our main hospitality areas at the ballpark. And I'll never forget, she asked me on the suite level, Dave, why are you so nice? And I don't know if I get that question a lot from people, especially around my own household. And I'll use her first name. I go, Janice. I go, we're in year one of a 5-year deal. I'm working on the next 5-year deal. And I said that to her because we had been friends long before that all happened. But I think that's the mindset I try to carry is, if I don't have a conversation or invite you to play golf or out to lunch or whatever, and if I wait 1,500 days to call you back, that relationship's going to dissolve. So I try to have little touch points where I'm not asking for anything. And I personally have about 70 clients. So it's challenging. It really is.
For sure. Well, there's a quote that you may have read that I really like. It's from a gentleman named Robert Johnson. And he says, you need to make your friends before you need them. To really be investing in relationships now to get the benefit of those relationships 5, 10, 20 years down the road. And we live in a quick fix society where people are like, hey, if I help you today, you're going to help me tomorrow. One of the things I've realized as I've gotten a lot older and a little wiser is it doesn't work that way. It's I help you today, and then maybe 5 years from now, you're going to refer someone to me or you'll reciprocate, but it doesn't happen overnight, and it only happens if you make those early investments.
Well, like tonight, I mean, I somehow you got my name from somebody that I work with. Yeah. And, I was honored when I saw who that was, you know, because he's been a client of mine for 8 to 10 years.
Remind me, who was
Brian
Englehart?
With Indiana Tech.
Yeah, Brian.
I didn't know if you wanted to use his name.
Oh, sure. Brian's great. Brian is name dropped on this podcast all the time. He was actually the first guest on this podcast ever. That's one of the reasons I reached out to him. He has a unique spot.
Rolodex full of folks.
That's right. He has a unique spot in the heart of the Azure Marketing Podcast.
I must have been at the end of the Rolodex. I don't know. But hey, I made it.
Well, he was one of the first people you were one of the first people he mentioned. So that's great. Yeah. But it really is, I think that's great perspective too, is to remember that, whether or not you're in a relationship business, if you don't think you're in a relationship business, you're probably wrong. Every business is a relationship business.
There's different seminars throughout minor league baseball, and the one that I've always really enjoyed going to when I can is the promotional seminar. Well, there hasn't been one since 2019, and that was in El Paso, Texas. Beautiful city, loved it. And on the bus ride to one of these events that we went and painted the local Boys and Girls Club. So there's always something going on at those things. And when I was talking to a buddy of mine that runs the West Michigan Whitecaps, and we were talking about stuff, and somehow delivering season tickets came up. Mm-hmm. And he's a great guy. Jim Jarecki's his name. He's been up there for almost 30 years as their team president and VP. And I told him, I said, man, I really like delivering my season tickets. And we were chatting about that. And, and he knew why, but he goes, hey, why do you like doing it? I go, because I'm kind of the bearer of good news. Mm-hmm. Summertime is around the corner, right? Yeah. Here's your 4 tickets. Yeah. And then you can maybe meet some other people within the organization that you don't know. Yeah. And because sometimes your clients, they change jobs and you're like, oh, geez, I don't know anybody. Yeah. And just by doing that, you can, learn a few other people's and they can know your face. So when they see you at the ballpark, they can say hi to you. And I just really enjoy it because I'm the bearer of good news. I'm bringing your season tickets. Everybody's asking, hey, the weather's starting to get nice. Yeah. And it's just... It's a joyful time. Yeah. And I'm not asking for anything. Yeah. Because I've already asked and got the yes, right? Yeah. So now it's just one of those times where you can just have a touch point and just be a regular guy. Yeah. Yeah. All right. Well, last quick hit question. And it has to do with something you use in your work. It could be, I know you're a big reader, so it could be a book, could be a tool, could be a trick, could be a hack, could be a tip. Something that you use every day or at least most days that helps you be more effective, something you'd recommend to others. Well, if it wasn't for my wife and my 2 kids, I wouldn't have a computer, a TV, or any of that stuff because I don't know how any of it works. I'm old school, man. Yeah. I like face-to-face. Yeah. Yeah. There's nothing wrong with that. I just love face-to-face. Yeah. Yeah. Well, I mean, one of the things that it sounds obvious now, but I don't think it was obvious 3 years ago. I think one of the best things that came out of the pandemic is people have learned that there's something about this being in the same room that you really can't replace. Like video conference is okay, but it's a substitute. It's not as good. And I don't even know if we have figured out why that is. But, when I do a presentation and I'm asked to do it virtually, a lot of times I'll say yes, but I would much rather be face-to-face. And in sales, it's critical. There's a reason people still get on planes for sales calls. Do you have any sense as to why that is? Why do you value the face-to-face so much? What is it about that makes it better than picking up the phone or a video conference? Well, whether I go through a drive-through late at night, or whether I go get gas, I really like to... I'm a part of this community, right? Just like you guys are here. And for me to really feel like I'm putting my best foot forward every day, I don't like, I mean, this is just me. I don't really enjoy ordering off an app.
Yeah.
Plus, I wouldn't even know how to do it. Right?
Yeah.
But if I had the choice, if I knew how to do it and had the choice of either going here or going up and talking to the person behind the counter, I'm going to do that.
Yeah.
I'm going to tell you a story.
I was going to ask you about the thing you posted on LinkedIn about the drive-thru. Is that what you're going to talk about?
Well, no, I got a different story.
Okay, let's go with your story.
There's a good buddy of mine ran a local chain here for several years.
Yeah.
And I went into one of his stores, and the girl that was behind the counter, I could tell she wasn't having the best day ever, right? And I noticed that her engagement ring or wedding ring, I don't know the difference, pardon me, and it was just absolutely beautiful.
Yeah.
And I was with my wife, and I said, man, I love your ring. She totally just did a turnaround with her attitude. And she was just engrossed in what I had to say. And that just had our conversation go a different way.
Yeah.
And I walked out of there thinking to myself, man, it's not about David Lorenz. It's really not. It's about how we can maybe impact and make someone else's day.
Yeah.
Because I just knew something wasn't right.
Yeah.
When I mentioned her ring, she just was like,
and it cost you $0.
Cost nothing.
20 seconds.
It cost nothing.
Yeah. Yeah.
And that just, to me, I've been in this community, besides living in Mount Pleasant, Michigan for 25 years of my life, living here for almost 25. This is home.
Yeah.
For myself, my wife, and my kids.
Yeah.
And I think anytime you get an opportunity to be a part of the community in just little ways, I think we all need to. We need to jump on board while we can.
Yeah, well, that's great. Well, I'm going to ask you. I'm going to put you on the spot because I brought it up. Can you tell the story about the interaction you had that you shared on LinkedIn?
Sure.
I think it was a drive-through. Can you share that story to close us out? Yeah.
Working at the ballpark, we get a lot of hot dogs, a lot of pizza, a lot of brats, a lot of barbecue, right?
Yeah.
And for some reason that night I didn't have a chance to eat.
Yeah.
And on the way home, with COVID, there's not as many places open at 9:30, 10 o'clock at night. So I went through the Arby's drive-thru. Again, I was the only guy in line, and ordered my food, went up to the line, and the guy saw my Tin Caps polo. He ended up being a 29-year-old gentleman with, I believe he said he had 3 or 4 kids. And he goes, so do you work for the Tin Caps? And I said, yeah, I'm on year 29. I said, it's a privilege and a joy to go to the ballpark every year. And I don't like to talk about my job outside of work because that's what I do for a living.
Yeah, sure.
And I said to the gentleman, I go, what's your story? He goes, well, I'm only 29 and my chapter, I'm only halfway through the book or whatever he said.
Yeah.
And I said, okay, I got it. And I said, well, what do you like to do for fun? Anthony, his eyes lit up. It was like I opened up. It was like the girl with the ring. It was the same thing. What do you like to do for fun? And he goes, well, I coach 9 and under youth baseball. Okay.
Yeah.
Well, I work for a baseball
Speaking
team, right?
the same language.
So we've got a passion there. So I found something that we had connections with. My food's still being cooked. I ordered the jalapeno poppers. They always got to throw those in. So I knew I had a few minutes. And I said, hey, give me a minute. I got something in the back of my car. For about 4 or 5 years or whatever it's been, I've always carried around 20 to 50 used baseballs from our games because I'll go to like some little league games and I put one in my pocket. If I see a kid with a glove with no ball, I go up and hand it to him.
Yeah.
I say, I'm David with the Tin Caps. This was a foul ball. I'd love to give it to you.
Yep.
Just make that kid's day.
And he's going to associate it with the team and probably have a good feeling about the team.
Right. You're exactly right. So the gentleman that works at Arby's, I got him 12 balls and I handed them to them through the window. It's 10:30 at night. So
not the transaction.
Picture a guy in a white family car passing out, baseballs through the. It was like
that's a weird way to pay for your food.
Yeah, it looked like a side deal. And I said, hey, there's 12 balls. Give each one of your kid a ball, and so they can go home and play catch with mom or dad.
Yeah. Yeah.
And it was like I gave him a brand new car.
Yeah. Well, that's awesome.
So when it comes back to, ordering on an app or seeing people face to face, I mean, if I did that on an app, I wouldn't have that interaction.
Yeah.
And I'll be honest with you, I think I get as much joy out of doing that as they do receiving it.
Yeah, for sure. Well, that is great advice and really great story. I think the bottom line is people take an interest in people who take an interest in them, right? But sometimes you got to make the first move. So that's great.
You're exactly right. And I think what you just said explains sales.
Yeah, for sure.
It really does. If you want somebody to be a part of what you're doing, you got to be a part of what they're doing.
All right. Well, let's quit while we're ahead.
Okay.
We're doing great, and I don't want to screw it up. So
Perfect.
We're going to end here. Well, David, thank you so much. Thanks for being a part of the community for as long as you have been. Thanks for being on the podcast. Really appreciate it.
Appreciate you, sir. Thank you.
Thank you for listening to the Asher Marketing Podcast. The Asher Marketing Podcast is a production of Asher Agency, a full-service agency for franchises and co-ops, colleges and universities, financial service companies, healthcare organizations, and government agencies. We'll be back next time with another great guest, and we hope you'll join us then.